The galaxy knew her only as the Leper Queen, a title whispered in hushed tones by those who dared speak of her at all. Queen Vayara of Narsid, once revered for her wisdom and beauty, had become a tragic figure of fear and revulsion. A rare and aggressive form of leprosy had ravaged her body, leaving her confined to her palace on the desolate edges of the Narsidian system. The disease, unlike anything seen in known space, carried an aura of mystique and terror. Rumors of its supernatural origins only fueled the stigma. Even her court had abandoned her. Advisors fled, guards resigned, and ambassadors severed ties. Vayara's palace, once a beacon of Narsidian grandeur, was now a crumbling fortress shrouded in silence. The queen herself had accepted her fate, spending her days in solitude, a spectral figure within her gilded prison. Beyond the palace walls, Narsid was spiraling into chaos. With their queen incapacitated, political factions vied for power, leaving the once prosperous planet in disarray. The galaxy watched from afar, unwilling to intervene in what many deemed a lost cause. Until Dr. Eli Ramsey arrived. The ship touched down in the overgrown courtyard of the palace, its engines scattering leaves and dust into the air. Dr. Eli Ramsey stepped out, his simple Earth-standard medical pack slung over his shoulder. The courtyard, once alive with the hum of royal festivities, was eerily silent. Vines crept up the walls, and statues of long-dead kings stared down like solemn sentinels. Eli was no stranger to hostile environments. As a medic specializing in xenobiology and infectious diseases, he had worked in some of the galaxy's most dangerous outbreaks. But this assignment was different. The Galactic Health Bureau had issued the mission as a formality, not expecting anyone to volunteer. Yet here he was, walking into what others had deemed certain death. 2 remaining palace guards met him at the entrance. Their expressions were a mix of disbelief and disdain. "You're the human medic?" one asked, his voice tinged with skepticism. "That's me," Eli replied, his tone steady. The guard hesitated. "You know what's inside, right?" Eli adjusted the strap of his medical pack. "A patient." The guard shook his head but stepped aside. "Good luck, you'll need it." Inside, the palace was a mausoleum of grandeur. The once brilliant tapestries hung in tatters, and the air was heavy with the scent of decay. Eli was led to the inner sanctum, a vast chamber dimly lit by the faint glow of bioluminescent crystals. At its center sat Queen Vayara, her figure obscured by layers of flowing fabric and shadows. Her voice, when she spoke, was raspy but commanding. "You're not from Narsid." "No," Eli said, stepping closer. "Dr. Eli Ramsey, I'm here to help." She laughed, a dry, brittle sound. "You're here to die, human. The galaxy sent you to make a show of compassion. Leave before you share my fate." Eli set down his pack, unperturbed. "I've seen worse." Her piercing eyes locked onto his, searching for mockery or fear. She found neither. "Why?" she asked, her voice softer now, almost vulnerable. "Because no one else will," Eli replied simply. For the first time in years, Queen Vayara was silent, caught off guard by the quiet conviction in his voice. In that moment, she saw not pity, but determination. And though doubt lingered, a spark of hope flickered within her, a fragile, tentative thing, but alive nonetheless. Dr. Eli Ramsey's first days in the palace were a study in isolation. The palace staff avoided him like a specter, their distrust of his mission palpable. The silence that pervaded the halls seemed to thrum with the weight of unspoken fears. Eli, however, remained undeterred. His focus was on the queen, and her condition was unlike anything he had encountered. Queen Vayara sat in the dim light of her chamber, a figure cloaked in flowing silks designed to obscure the ravages of her disease. Her voice, brittle yet regal, carried a warning with every word. "You cannot treat what you do not understand, human. My ailment is a curse, not a sickness." Eli, ever pragmatic, unpacked his medical equipment. "Curses don't cause cellular decay or bacterial infiltration," he replied, setting up a small analysis unit. "We'll start with blood samples." Vayara watched as he worked, her violet eyes sharp despite her weakened state. "And if your science fails, what then? Will you abandon me as the others have?" Eli met her gaze without flinching. "I don't abandon patients." Her expression softened, a flicker of something akin to respect crossing her features. "Then you are either brave or foolish." "Both," Eli replied with a faint smile, eliciting the smallest twitch of amusement from the queen. Eli's initial findings were both fascinating and troubling. The disease was indeed a form of leprosy, but it had evolved alongside the unique biology of the Narcidians, incorporating aspects of their bioluminescent physiology. The result was an aggressive condition that not only attacked her body, but seemed to drain her luminous energy, the very essence of her people. "It's like your body is fighting itself," Eli explained during one of their sessions. "Your immune system's response is destroying healthy cells along with the infected ones." Viara tilted her head, her voice laced with skepticism. "And what can your earth science do about that?" Eli hesitated. "I don't have an answer yet, but I will." Her laughter echoed through the chamber, dry and tinged with bitterness. "You are determined, I'll grant you that. Let us see how far your determination takes you." As days turned into weeks, Eli's persistence began to chip away at the barriers surrounding Queen Viara, both physical and emotional. He spent hours researching and experimenting, blending human medical techniques with Narcidian remedies he gleaned from ancient texts in the palace archives. He even ventured into the palace gardens, now overgrown and wild, in search of plants rumored to have healing properties. Viara watched his efforts with growing curiosity. "You do not fear the disease," she remarked one evening as he prepared a salve. "Fear doesn't help anyone," Eli replied, carefully applying the mixture to a lesion on her arm. Her eyes lingered on his hands, steady and deliberate. "You treat me as though I were whole." "You are whole," Eli said without looking up. "This disease is part of you, but doesn't define you." For a moment, Viara was silent, her regal facade cracking just enough to reveal the wariness beneath. "Do you believe that, or do you say it to ease my pride?" Eli met her gaze. "I believe it." Their exchanges became more frequent, their conversations moving beyond medical treatment to stories of their respective worlds. Viara spoke of Narcid's golden age, of the shimmering festivals and the unity that once defined her people. Eli shared tales of Earth's struggles and triumphs, painting a picture of resilience in the face of adversity. "You humans are strange," Viara mused one evening, her tone lighter than usual. "So fragile, yet so relentless." Eli chuckled. "We don't know when to quit. It's both a strength and a flaw." "Perhaps it is what makes you unique," she said, a hint of admiration in her voice. The staff, who had initially dismissed Eli as doomed, began to notice the change in the queen. Her tone grew less sharp, her posture less guarded. Word of her slow but visible improvement began to spread beyond the palace walls, sparking whispers across Narcid and the galaxy at large. But not all were pleased. In the shadows of the court, dissent stirred. Factions that had thrived in the queen's absence saw Eli's presence as a threat to their ambitions. For the first time, Queen Viara's recovery seemed to promise more than just a personal triumph. It was the start of something far greater. As Eli sat with Viara that night, going over his latest findings, she studied him with a look that was both curious and cautious. "You've stayed longer than anyone expected, Dr. Ramsey, even me." Eli smiled faintly. "I told you, I don't abandon patients." "And if I am not just a patient?" she asked softly. He paused, meeting her gaze. "Then you're a queen, and I'm here to help you remember what that means." For the first time in years, Viara allowed herself a flicker of hope. Together, they were beginning to forge a bridge, not just between healer and patient, but between two worlds that had long stood apart. Eli's treatments were showing tangible results. The lesions on Queen Viara's skin began to heal, and the bioluminescent glow that defined her people started to flicker faintly within her. The progress was slow but undeniable, and with it came a gradual change in the queen's demeanor. Where once there had been despair and defiance, there was now cautious optimism. One evening, as Eli carefully bandaged a fading wound on her arm, Viara broke the silence. "Do you know what they call me across the galaxy?" Eli glanced up. "The Leper Queen," he said bluntly, his tone devoid of judgment. She smiled bitterly. "A fitting title, isn't it? Once revered, now a cautionary tale." Eli paused, his hands steady as he finished the dressing. "Titles don't define who you are. What matters is what you do with the time you have." Her violet eyes studied him, searching for insincerity and finding none. Spoken like someone who's fought their own battles. "We all have scars," Eli said, sitting back. "Some are just easier to see." The queen nodded slowly, her gaze distant. "Perhaps I've hidden from mine for too long." Word of her recovery spread beyond the palace walls, despite the queen's efforts to keep it quiet. Among the Narcidian people, rumors of her healing sparked both hope and fear. While many longed for her return, others, particularly those who had capitalized on her absence, were less enthusiastic. Late one night, Eli found himself summoned to a secret meeting with a group of palace staff loyal to the queen. They spoke in hushed tones, their faces lined with worry. "Dr. Ramsey, there are those who wish to see the queen remain in isolation," one of them whispered. "Her return threatens their power." Eli's jaw tightened. "Do they plan to act?" The staff member nodded. "We've heard whispers of sabotage, an attempt to discredit your work and, by extension, the queen." Eli's mind raced. "Then we'll be ready." The attack came 2 days later. Eli had been working late in his makeshift laboratory, reviewing the queen's latest test results. The palace, typically silent at night, suddenly erupted into chaos as a loud explosion shook the walls. He grabbed his medical pack and ran toward the source, his instincts on high alert. Reaching the queen's chamber, he found the doors forced open and the room in disarray. Bayara stood in the center, her weakened body glowing faintly as she wielded what remained of her bioluminescent energy to fend off intruders. 3 shadowy figures moved toward her, their weapons raised. Eli didn't hesitate. He charged into the room, tackling the nearest attacker. His military training, long dormant, came flooding back as he disarmed the assailant and incapacitated him with a swift blow. Bayara, drawing on the strength she barely believed she still possessed, sent a burst of light toward the others, blinding them long enough for Eli to act. The remaining intruders retreated, but not before one of them hissed, "The galaxy will never accept a cursed queen." As the silence returned, Eli turned to Bayara, his chest heaving. "Are you all right?" She nodded, though her glowing hands trembled. "I had forgotten what it feels like to fight for myself." Eli smiled faintly. "Looks like you remembered just in time." In the aftermath of the attack, Eli and Bayara assessed the damage. The saboteurs had destroyed a section of his lab, but the queen's condition remained stable. The attack, however, had shaken Bayara in a way that no disease could. "They were willing to kill me to maintain their control," she said, sitting on the edge of her bed. "I thought my exile would spare my people from further pain, but it seems I was wrong." Eli sat beside her, his voice steady. "Your exile gave them room to grow bold, but your recovery threatens their plans. That's why they're scared." Bayara turned to him, her gaze piercing. "And what do you think I should do?" He met her eyes without hesitation. "Show them that their fear is justified." The attack became a turning point. The queen, emboldened by her progress and Eli's unwavering support, began to reclaim her authority. She held secret meetings with loyalists, laying the groundwork for her return to power. Eli continued his work, refining her treatment and preparing for the inevitable pushback from those who sought to keep her in the shadows. One night, as they reviewed plans together, Bayara placed a hand on Eli's arm. "You've done more than heal me, Eli. You've reminded me of who I am." He smiled, his voice warm. "And who is that?" Her violet eyes glowed faintly as she answered, her voice filled with quiet strength. "I am Queen Bayara of Narcid, and I will not be forgotten." Together, they prepared for the battles ahead, their alliance stronger than ever, and their resolve unshakable. The palace was no longer a sanctuary. It was a battleground. In the days following the attack, Queen Bayara's enemies within the court began to reveal themselves, emboldened by the attempt on her life. Their whispers turned to open defiance, and factions that had once operated in the shadows stepped forward, challenging her claim to the throne. Bayara, now stronger than she had been in years, faced the descent head-on. With Dr. Eli Ramsey by her side, she convened a council meeting in the Great Hall for the first time in a decade. The hall, once a symbol of Narcid's unity, was now filled with tension as loyalists and rebels alike gathered under its soaring arches. "I have remained silent for too long," Bayara began, her voice steady but commanding. "My illness was used to strip me of my power and isolate me from my people, but no more. Today I reclaim what was stolen." One of the rebel leaders, a grizzled former advisor named Harix, stepped forward. "Your Majesty, with respect, your return endangers the stability of Narcid. The people fear your disease. They see your recovery as unnatural." Eli stepped forward, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "Unnatural?" I've worked tirelessly to treat the queen with a combination of science and Narcidian remedies. Her recovery is a testament to resilience, not sorcery." Harik sneered. "And what would a human know of our ways?" Eli held his ground. "Enough to know that fear and ignorance have no place in leadership." Vayara raised her hand, silencing the room. "You question my recovery because it threatens your hold on power. You used my suffering to fuel your ambitions, but that ends today." She stepped forward, her bioluminescent glow faint but unmistakable. "The people of Narcid deserve better than leaders who prey on their fears. I am their queen, and I will not abandon them." Her words reverberated through the hall, drawing uncertain murmurs from the crowd. For the first time, the rebels seemed shaken, their confidence wavering in the face of Vayara's defiance. The queen's declaration galvanized both sides. Her loyalists rallied behind her, while the rebels retreated to their stronghold in the northern provinces, preparing for a final confrontation. Vayara, no longer content to hide, led her forces with Ile by her side, their bond a symbol of hope and resilience. The march to the north was grueling. The rebels had fortified their position, using the mountainous terrain to their advantage. As Vayara's forces approached, they encountered traps, ambushes, and skirmishes designed to wear them down. Eli, though a medic, found himself in the thick of the fighting, using his knowledge of anatomy and quick reflexes to outmaneuver their enemies. One night, as they camped on the edge of the rebel stronghold, Vayara and Eli shared a quiet moment by the fire. "You've risked everything for me," she said, her voice soft. "Why?" Eli poked the fire with a stick, his expression thoughtful. "Because I believe in you. You're not just a patient, Vayara, you're a leader, and leaders like you don't come around often." Her gaze lingered on him, a mix of gratitude and something deeper. "Then let's make sure this risk isn't in vain." The final battle began at dawn. Vayara's forces launched a coordinated assault, their strategy a blend of traditional Narcidian tactics and Eli's human ingenuity. The rebels fought fiercely, their desperation fueling their determination, but Vayara's presence on the battlefield inspired her troops to push forward. Eli played a crucial role, not only tending to the wounded, but also relaying commands and adapting strategies as the battle unfolded. His efforts earned him the respect of the Narcidian soldiers, who began to see him not as an outsider, but as a trusted ally. The turning point came when Vayara confronted Harik on the battlefield. The rebel leader, clad in ornate armor, sneered as she approached. "You should have stayed in your palace, Leper Queen." Vayara's glow intensified, her bioluminescent energy a testament to her renewal. "And you should have stayed loyal to your people." The fight was swift and decisive. Harik underestimated the queen's resilience and strength, and with a well-placed strike, she disarmed him. The sight of their leader defeated shattered the rebels' morale, and they began to surrender en masse. As the sun set over the battlefield, Vayara stood victorious. Her troops cheered, their cries echoing through the mountains. Eli approached her, his uniform stained with dirt and blood, but his expression triumphant. "You did it." She turned to him, her eyes shining. "We did it." Their victory marked not just the end of the rebellion, but the beginning of a new era for Narcid. Vayara's return to power was no longer a question. It was a fact, one backed by the loyalty of her people and the unwavering support of a human medic who had dared to believe in her when no one else would. Together, they had changed the fate of a kingdom and redefined what was possible in the galaxy. The aftermath of the battle left the once fractured kingdom of Narcid poised for a new beginning. Queen Vayara returned to the capital in triumph, her presence rekindling a sense of unity and hope among her people. The royal palace, long abandoned by the court, came alive once more, as loyalists flocked to pledge their allegiance. Dr. Eli Ramsey, though accustomed to life in chaos, found himself uneasy amidst the grandeur of court celebrations. He remained in the background, tending to the wounded and refining the queen's treatment. Despite her victory, Vayara's health was still fragile, and Eli knew her recovery would require vigilance. In the days following their return, Vayara summoned Eli to the royal gardens, a lush expanse newly revitalized under her orders. She stood beneath a sprawling bioluminescent tree, its glow mirroring the faint light that now emanated from her once again. "You've avoided the court's festivities," she said, her tone gentle. Eli shrugged, leaning against the trunk of the tree. Not really my scene. Besides, the work's not done. Her lips curved into a faint smile. Always the pragmatist. Eli's gaze softened as he looked at her. You've come a long way, Vayara. But you know as well as I do, some wounds take time. She nodded, the weight of her responsibility clear in her eyes. My people need a leader, Eli. For years I let them down. I can't afford to do so again. You won't? He said firmly. You've already proven that. Despite the unity growing among the Narcidian people, whispers of dissent lingered. A few remnants of the rebel faction had gone into hiding, conspiring to undermine Vayara's rule. Their plan was bold, to stage an attack during her first public address since her recovery, a moment meant to signify her full return to power. Eli, ever vigilant, caught wind of the plot through his growing network of palace staff and informants. He confronted Vayara in the war room, the tension between them palpable. They're planning something. We need to tighten security. Vayara's expression was resolute. If I cower behind walls, they win. My people need to see me unafraid. And if they kill you? Eli countered, his frustration evident. You're not invincible. Neither are they, she replied, her tone unyielding. But I trust you to ensure they don't succeed. Her words were both a challenge and a declaration of trust, and Eli felt the weight of her faith in him. Chapter 10. The Queen's Triumph. The Grand Plaza of Narcid's capital was filled with citizens eager to witness Queen Vayara's historic address. The bioluminescent architecture of the city glowed softly in the twilight, casting an ethereal light over the crowd. Vayara stood atop a raised platform, her regal figure framed by banners bearing the royal crest. Eli watched from the shadows, his eyes scanning the crowd for any signs of danger. Hidden among the crowd were loyal guards and informants, all briefed on the possibility of an attack. Eli himself carried a concealed weapon, his senses heightened. Vayara stepped forward, her voice strong and clear as she addressed her people. Citizens of Narcid, for too long I allowed my illness to define me. I let fear and despair consume me, and in doing so I failed you. But today I stand before you, not as a symbol of weakness, but of resilience. The crowd erupted in applause, their cheers echoing through the plaza. Eli's gaze flicked toward the movement at the far edge of the crowd. Subtle but deliberate. A group of figures pushed forward, their weapons concealed beneath cloaks. Eli moved swiftly, signaling the guards as he intercepted one of the assailants. The man lunged at him with a blade, but Eli disarmed him with practiced ease, his training taking over. The guards sprang into action, neutralizing the remaining attackers before they could reach the stage. Above the fray, Vayara remained calm, her voice unwavering. Even now, there are those who seek to divide us. But let this be a lesson. Narcid will not bow to fear or hatred. Together, we will rebuild. The crowd roared its approval, their voices drowning out the last remnants of the rebellion. The attackers were subdued, and the Queen's address continued without further incident. As the plaza emptied and the celebrations began, Vayara sought out Eli in the aftermath. She found him near the edge of the platform, his posture weary but his eyes sharp. You saved me again, she said, her voice soft. Eli shrugged, his lips curving into a faint smile. Just doing my job. It's more than that, she said, stepping closer. You believed in me when no one else did. You gave me back my strength. Eli met her gaze, his expression serious. You gave yourself back your strength, Vayara. I just reminded you of what was already there. For a moment, neither spoke, the silence between them filled with unspoken gratitude. Then Vayara extended her hand. Will you stay? Eli hesitated, the weight of her question settling over him. For a while, he said finally, there's still work to do. Vayara's smile was luminous, her glow matching the light of the city around them. Then let's get to it. Together they walked into the future, their bond a testament to the power of resilience, trust, and the unlikely alliance that had not only saved a queen, but reshaped the destiny of a kingdom.